my teacher, in the Tibetan tradition, at least in the Gelugpa tradition, when the monks and nuns are studying in the monasteries, they have classes with their teacher, and then they debate with each other. And I think they actually spend more time debating with each other than they do in class with their teacher. And they say that is one of the greatest ways that they learn. I mean, our discussions aren't quite the same as what they're debating, but it still, kind of sharpens your intelligence to have to think and then, yeah, express your thoughts. Okay, so so we'll do a meditation, but I just want to say a few things before we jump into the meditation. So in last week's class, I talked about two main kinds of meditation: placement or stabilizing meditation, which is for developing concentration, and analytical meditation, which is to develop wisdom, understanding how things exist. And I also explained how the two can be combined. So you can do a session of just one of those types of meditations, just a placement meditation or just analytical meditation, but you can also combine them. So, for example, in a session where you're doing an analytical meditation, you're contemplating some topic, like something that the Buddha taught. And then after contemplating it for a while, you might experience some change in your mind, some like insight, some aha experience. Oh, I understand. Something kind of clicks and you get this kind of deeper experience than just words. And so if you have that kind of experience, they say it's good to just stop your analysis, your thinking, and just focus on that experience as long as you can, even if it's just a few seconds. And in that way, that's how the mind gets familiar with that new insight, that new experience, which is meant to, bring about a positive change in our mind. And this is actually something they talk about in neuroscience. Not that I know much about neuroscience, but there's a book called Buddha's Brain by Rick Hanson. He's a neuropsychologist and also a meditator and a meditation teacher. And it's a really nice book. I recommend it because he talks about the brain in terms of meditation, what happens in our brain when we're meditating. And he also talks a lot about Buddhist ideas, with the language of neuroscience. So it's a nice combination between the two traditions, and it's really easy. He makes it really easy to understand and really funny, humorous. So he explains that our brain has the tendency to focus more on negative things, less on positive things. And they believe that this is a consequence of evolution of human beings on this planet, because our early ancestors needed to pay attention to negative things like threats. There were lots of threats and dangers, and they really had to pay attention to those to protect themselves, to stay alive. Whereas positive things like seeing a beautiful sunset or seeing a beautiful flower wasn't so crucial for survival. And so they're, I don't know if this is true or not, but this is what they say in neuroscience, that our brain evolved so that we pay more attention to negative things and less attention to positive things. And in fact, Rick Hansen says our brain is like Velcro when it comes to negative experiences, and like Teflon when it comes to positive experiences. Does that sound familiar? I could see some of you nodding your heads. I was so relieved when I read that, and I thought, oh, you mean I'm not the only person in the world who's like this? Apparently, yeah, this is, yeah, part of our human experience, at least on this planet. But the good thing is that it's possible to change this. We can change our brain. And one way of doing that, he recommends, um, is yeah, when you do have some positive experience, like seeing a beautiful flower or a beautiful sunset or a little kid looking happy, something that's kind of beautiful and sweet, um, stay with it. Just stay focused on that, even for 5 seconds. Okay, don't just, immediately move on to the next thing, but stay with it. Let yourself experience it and absorb it at least 5 seconds, the more the better. But he said if we do that, we make a practice of that, then that actually changes our brain so that we do start to have, yeah, we start to experience positive things more and less negative things. And this is actually similar to what we do in meditation. What we're trying to do in meditation is meditate ourselves into a positive state of mind, some kind of positive thought experience, and then try to stay with that as long as we can, even just a few minutes. Because in that way, we're making ourselves familiar or habituating ourselves with that experience. And that way it stays. It starts to stay and become more part of our normal way of thinking and being, our normal reality. Okay, so I thought we'll do a meditation, an analytical meditation. I thought to use the Four Noble Truths. That's the first thing that the Buddha taught. So I think you're probably familiar with it. Um, but the Buddha always said, we should investigate what he teaches, not just blindly believe and think, oh, this must be true because the Buddha said so. He didn't want that, and that's not really helpful. What's helpful is to think about what he taught, check to see if it's true or not. Use our own experiences and, things we've learned in life and so on, and check. So I thought we can do a not very long session on the Four Noble Truths, doing a little bit of analysis. And and so keep in mind this notion that, yeah, if you do, it may not happen. Don't expect it to happen. But if you do have some experience, like an aha experience, like, the light bulb going off in your head, you suddenly, oh yeah, that makes sense. I understand. Something like that. Then it's fine to just pause and try to hold on to that experience as long as you can, even just a few seconds before you go on and think about the next thing. Okay, and then we'll also use the format that I explained before, the four components of a meditation session. First, sit, get yourself comfortable in a good position for meditation. Motivate, generate a positive motivation for doing the meditation, then doing the meditation itself, and then finally dedicating the positive energy to the benefit of everyone. Okay, so let's start with sitting. So so try to keep your back straight, but also let your shoulders relax. Don't be tight. Try to let the whole of your body relax. just check and see if there's tension anywhere in your body. And if there is, see if you can let it go. You can breathe out the tension as you exhale. Imagine sending all that tension out of you and it disappears in space. Mhm. And also relax your mind. You might have thoughts in your mind left from the things you did today or things that happened to you today that may have upset you or disturbed you, and you're still sort of processing those things. So just put those things aside for now. You can always bring them up again later and think about them, but really try to put aside everything else and just focus on what we're doing here in this class, in this meditation. And then let's take a few more moments to think about why we're here. So I'm sure all of us want to be happy, want to have good experiences, and want to avoid suffering, problems, bad experiences. That's probably part of our reason for being here, learning about meditation, hoping that this will help us be more happy and peaceful and have fewer problems. And that's fine. But it's also good if we can expand our awareness, open our heart, and think about others and feel the wish to be of benefit to others. Let's try to feel how nice it would be if in your life you could be helpful to others. You could help them to have more happiness, more good experiences, and to have less suffering, troubles, problems. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to help others do that as well? So if that feels right to you, then you can incorporate that in your reason for being here and doing this meditation. You can think, I want to learn how to be more helpful to others, bring happiness and help them with their suffering and problems. So may this meditation help to bring that about. Something like that. So let's spend the first 5 minutes of this session doing meditation on the breath as we've done before. And in that way, we can increase our experience with placement or stabilizing meditation, learning how to concentrate. So just try to stay focused on the breath, coming in and going out, one breath after another. And Whenever your mind wanders away from the breath, bring it back. Try to not get frustrated if you have to do this again and again. Be patient. Be kind to yourself. And just patiently bring your mind, your awareness back to your breathing every time it wanders away. Okay, so now I'll start to guide the analytical meditation. I'll mention a few things, points for you to contemplate, and then give you time to contemplate them. And try to keep your mind focused on what we're doing, what we're meditating on, and not wander away to other things. If other thoughts do come up in your mind, put them aside and come back to what we're meditating on. So, the first of the four truths taught by the Buddha is usually called suffering. And this refers to any kind of unpleasant, unwanted, unsatisfying experience that we may have. So it isn't just horrible things like war, cancer, and so on, but even aches and pains in our body, uh, little discomforts that we have, as well as mental unhappiness, boredom, restlessness, irritation, depression. So, all different kinds of mental or emotional problems. So, just check to see if, in your experience, what the Buddha said is true, that as we go through life, we encounter these unwanted problems again and again. We can't be completely free of them. And check to see if you are the only person in the world who has problems, or is this common? Is it part of our human experience to encounter unpleasant experiences in our body and our mind? Okay, then the second truth is the causes or sources of suffering. So it's natural to wonder, why do we have problems? Why do these things happen to us? We don't want them. We want good experiences, not bad experiences. So why do they keep happening to us? So the Buddha wondered about that too. And in his meditation, looking deeply into himself, his mind, experience, what he discovered was there are two main causes of problems, suffering. One is afflictions or delusions. These are mental states like anger, greed, ignorance, and so forth, afflicted states of mind that don't see things correctly and that disturb our mind and lead to lots of problems. So that's one of the causes of suffering. And the other is karma. When our mind does get afflicted, like we get angry, for example, we can sometimes act out our anger, speaking harsh words or even physically harming someone. And in that way, we create negative karma, bad karma, which eventually will lead to suffering and problems if we don't purify it. So those are the two main causes of suffering and problems. So to check to see if this is true, see if you can find an example in your own life where maybe you got angry and you got so angry that you acted it out in your words, in your actions. And what did that lead to? Did that lead to happiness, good experiences, or did it lead to problems, suffering? So after contemplating those first two truths, can you accept that afflictions and harmful actions we do when our mind is afflicted are the cause of suffering and problems, both for yourself and for others? So, those first two truths describe our present situation, and those are things that we want to get rid of, we want to free ourselves from. And then the second two truths describe our potential for freedom or liberation and how to achieve that. So the third truth is called cessation. And the Buddha said it's possible to completely cease all suffering, all problems, and their causes. And the reason for this is because they're not permanent, fixed parts of us. They're transitory, impermanent. And there are antidotes, there are remedies, things we can use to get rid of suffering and its causes. And the Buddha found a way to do this. and said, we can do it too. Now, it's hard for us to be 100% sure about this because it may not be what we've experienced in life, but we could check it out by thinking of a time if you ever did have some affliction come up, like anger or jealousy or attachment or something that was really disturbing in your mind. And instead of following it, acting it out, you tried to do something else. You tried to apply some remedy, some antidote, and change your mind into a more positive state. So see if you can recall an experience like that and understand that that gives you a little taste of cessation, how it's possible to overcome afflictions and suffering by applying antidotes. And if you can remember a time when you were able to overcome an affliction and free your mind from it, then maybe you notice how you felt much better. You felt happier, more peaceful, better about yourself. So try to imagine what it would be like to be completely free of all negative emotions, all afflictive states of mind, such that they would never arise again. The mind would always be in a state of peace and freedom. So that brings us to the fourth and last of the four truths, which is called path. Path means, what do we do? How do we get to that state of freedom, cessation? And there's different ways of explaining the path, but one way that's fairly simple is in terms of three types of practice called the three trainings. The first one is ethical conduct, which means behaving in ethical ways, basically not harming, trying to live so that we don't give harm to anyone. We don't kill, steal, or physically harm, verbally harm. We just try to live in a non-harmful way as much as we can. And the second training is concentration, and that is working on our mind to learn how to keep our mind focused on an object that we choose, that the breath or some other meditation object, so that it's not wandering all over the place out of control. And the third higher training is wisdom, which means learning to see things as they are correctly, rather than in a confused, ignorant, distorted way. So one example would be understanding that everybody wants to be happy and doesn't want to suffer, just like we do. And so it doesn't make any sense to act in ways that cause suffering to others. And it makes more sense to act in ways that bring happiness to others. So that's one little example of developing a wisdom that sees things more correctly and that influences our behavior. So we act in more positive ways and aren't so likely to do negative, harmful things. So maybe you've had a little bit of experience of one or more of these trainings, and you might be able to recognize how trying to train yourself in these ways does benefit you, does help you go in the direction of greater peace and happiness and freedom from suffering. Now, see if, as a conclusion to the meditation, if any of these points made sense to you. See if you can make a determination to put more energy into learning and practicing in accordance with these teachings for your own benefit and for the benefit of others. And then finally, make a mental dedication of the positive energy of doing this meditation to the benefit of all beings, just as we had in the beginning with our motivation. You can dedicate that it will bring benefit, peace, and happiness to all beings and help them be free of their suffering and problems. So hopefully that will give you an idea of how to meditate, how to investigate some teaching of the Buddha using analytical meditation to check if what the Buddha said is true or not. Um, it was a relatively short period of time, and you may not have had enough time to really think about each of the points in as much detail as you needed to. But if you do have some taste of that, then you can, on your own, spend more time, as much time as you need to contemplate the points. And in fact, the topic of the Four Noble Truths, it can be done in a very simple way, like the way we just did it. But there's also a lot of information, a lot of details about the Four Noble Truths. So you could also spend like a whole meditation session on just one of the four truths in order to really go into it deeply. So when leading meditation, a guided analytical meditation, it's always a little hard to know how much time to give people. Some people need more time, some people want less time. So I just try to explain that I'm just giving you an idea. And then if you want, you can do it on your own and spend as much time as you wish, as you need to go through the various points. And also analytical meditations like the one we just did. It's not enough to do them only once and then, oh, okay, I know that, I've done that, and that's it. But rather, they need to be done again and again and again. Each time you'll probably get different experiences and deepen your experience. And so we have to do it again and again in order to really bring about change in our mind, change in our way of thinking and our way of living. And I know people sometimes feel a little puzzled by analytical meditation, like, meditating on the breath is very kind of famous and popular, and there's lots of information about it and, lots of material how to do it. But when it comes to analytical meditation, people wonder, well, how do I do it? But the lamas sometimes talk about how, in fact, we do know how to do analytical meditation. We do it all the time. We do it with our afflictions, with our delusions. Like when we're angry or when we have attachment, our mind is thinking, analyzing. So, just for example, Pabonka Rinpoche, there's a book called Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, which is teachings that he gave in Tibet sometime in the 1950s. So this is one of the Lamrim texts. And he says in there that, yeah, we're actually doing meditation, analytical meditation all the time, but on delusions rather than on the path to enlightenment. So, for example, with regard to enemy, meaning just somebody we don't like, okay, if there's somebody we decide, I don't like this person, then our mind will think again and again and again about that person, what they did to me, what they did to other people, and why I don't like them. I don't like them because of this. I don't like them because of that. So our mind can come up with lots of reasons why we dislike this person. And it's almost as if we are playing the role of prosecuting lawyer and judge and jury all rolled into one, because in the end we just decide this person is a total blank jerk or whatever nasty word you want to say. I don't like them. I'm not going to treat them nicely. I'm going to, be mean to them, whatever. Of course, some people go further than that and even decide to do something violent, unfortunately. But anyway, does this sound familiar? Have you ever noticed that happening when you're angry at someone, you don't like someone? And I mean, it could be like that they did things to us, they actually hurt us. So there may seem to be good reasons for disliking them, but still, our mind can come up with even more reasons. And we may even fantasize things we don't even know for sure, but we think, oh, this person is probably mean to his mother and he beats up his sister. And, we don't know for sure if that's true, but, our mind just likes to come up with more reasons why this person is so bad. So that's like analytical meditation, negative analytical meditation, because it just, increases our delusions, our afflictions, our suffering. And the same with attachment, like when you have attachment to either a person or to some kind of object, like you want a certain type of car, a certain type of phone or whatever. And then again, the mind can get like obsessed thinking about that person or that object, how happy you would be if you had it, what you would do with it, all the good times you would have, and so on and so on. And you just become more and more attached, more and more convinced, I have to have it. I can't be happy with it. And so, yeah. So again, that's like analytical meditation, but not in a positive sense, in a negative sense, because it just makes the mind more and more afflicted, leads to more suffering rather than happiness. So try to look out for that. Try to notice when that kind of thing is happening in your mind. It might be happening on a daily basis, maybe not a number of times every day. And just recognize, oh, wait a minute, this is delusion, this is affliction, this is harmful and not helpful. This is the cause of suffering, as the Buddha explained and all the lamas explain. And also it's important to understand that we do have a choice about what we do with our mind. We don't have to just let our mind run on its own, do whatever it wants to do. If we do that, then much of the time, our mind will do naughty things, things that aren't good for us and aren't good for others, and take us not in the direction of enlightenment and more happiness and peace, but in the direction of more suffering, more samsara. So we do have a choice, but it's also helpful to have some tools, some strategies, how to work with our mind. And so I thought to share some of the things from the Buddhist teachings. Like in the Buddhist teachings, there's actually a lot of material about how to work with our mind, how to work with delusions, afflictions. And so I thought tonight to talk about, there's 5 hindrances the Buddha mentioned as these are obstacles to concentration. So these are things that can come up when we're meditating and they make it difficult to have concentration, but they also happen in our daily life. Okay, and outside of meditation, in our daily life, these things can happen as well. And so, and he gave advice what to do about these when they do happen. So I'll first just go through the 5 hindrances, and then next we'll look at what we can do about them. So the first is called sensual desire, and this is attachment to objects of our 5 senses. So that means things that we see, things that we hear, odors or smells, tastes, and then bodily experiences. tactile sensations, things we feel with our body. So we ordinary beings tend to have a lot of desire, a lot of attachment for pleasant objects of our five senses. We like to look at beautiful things. We like to hear nice sounds and smell nice odors and taste delicious tastes and have good feelings in our body. And so that's the meaning of sensual desire. Now, this doesn't mean there's something wrong with having pleasant experiences. It's not wrong to have pleasant experiences like seeing beautiful objects, hearing beautiful sounds, and so on. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem is that our mind tends to have desire, attachment, clinging, craving. So when we have a pleasant experience, like hearing some pleasant sound or tasting some pleasant food or drink, then that can lead to craving, wanting more. I want that again and again and again and again. And that can be a real hindrance. You may have noticed this when we're meditating, that, you start off meditating on the breath or meditating on the Buddha or whatever. And after a little while, your mind starts thinking about, I want a cup of coffee. I want to eat a cheesecake. I want to listen to my favorite music, whatever. Have you ever noticed that? So, thoughts of our objects of attachment, the things that we're attached to, come up, and our mind gets distracted by those. And we might even decide to get up and leave our meditation and go and enjoy that object. Yeah. So that's clearly an obstacle to concentration, because we need to be able to keep our mind focused and concentrated and not going all over the place to all these different objects of attachment. Okay, number 2 is malice. And this, or it's sometimes called ill will, this is related to anger, hatred. And so again, it can happen. I don't know if it's happened to you, but it can happen when meditating. Thoughts about someone you don't like will pop up. Like maybe during the day, you met somebody and that person did something, said something that irritated you or hurt you, upset you. So you think of that in your meditation, and then anger comes up, and your mind might start thinking about how to get even with that person, how to get back at them. So this can happen. Your mind can go on a whole trip, a whole fantasy related to anger and malice, wishing to harm. And of course, your concentration is finished when that happens. Or it could also happen if there's some experience, something disturbing outside while you're meditating, like somebody's making noise. Yeah, I know this happens to me. I get very irritated if there's some noise, and if it's a person making the noise, then I can get very irritated at that person. And I don't know. I'm not really. I'm no longer at the stage where I actually want to harm that person, but just getting irritated, just feeling the irritation. Yeah, I want them to stop that noise. Um, yeah, so the mind can get very disturbed with irritation. Then 3 is kind of 2 in 1, but they're kind of similar. So lethargy and sleepiness. So lethargy is kind of a, lack of energy. You just feel kind of tired. There's no energy, no interest in meditating. You may feel bored. Oh, why am I doing this? So it's a lack of interest. And your mind can also be really dull. You know, you're trying to think of something, do some analytical meditation, but your mind is just really dull and tired. And then sleepiness is a further extension of that, where you're actually, falling asleep during meditation. So I think it's clear that these are obstacles to meditation. Ideally, we need to have a state of mind that is awake and alert, sharp, clear, and there's energy. There's kind of this interest in what we're doing. And number four is, again, two in one, restlessness and regret. So restlessness can include things like anxiety, worry, fear. You're kind of thinking about, oh, maybe this will happen, that will happen, and worrying about things. Okay. You've probably noticed that sometimes, something is coming up that you have to do, and you're worried that it may not go well. Restlessness can also be physical, like it's just really hard to sit still. Now you're just like agitated, you can't sit still, you don't feel calm. And then regret is when we think about something, it's mostly related to the past. Like there was something that we did that we realized wasn't good. We feel bad that we did that. I shouldn't have done that. Or it could also be there was something we should have done, but we didn't do. And so we regret not doing that. And so again, the mind, gets caught up thinking about that, feeling bad, feeling guilty. And so, yeah, in both cases, there's the mind is not peaceful and calm and concentrated because of these sort of anxious, worried thoughts. And the last is called deluded doubt. So, doubt in general isn't a bad thing because the Buddha did say that we should not just blindly believe what he said. We should investigate. And that does involve having some doubt, like, oh, Buddha said there's suffering. So is that true? I'm not sure. I want to check that out. Okay. So that's like healthy doubt, which leads us to do some investigation, and hopefully we'll come to a intelligent conclusion, a beneficial conclusion. But deluded doubt, on the other hand, isn't constructive. It's destructive. It's disturbing. So examples of deluded doubt would be like if you're sitting there and meditating and you start thinking, oh, is this really a good thing to be doing, or am I wasting my time? Right? Yeah. So that's really hard. If you have those kinds of thoughts coming up in your mind, then it's really hard to carry on with your practice because you think, well, maybe I'm wasting my time. Maybe I shouldn't be doing this. I should be doing something else. Yeah. So if that thought is there in your mind, then you're not concentrated, of course. Disturb your concentration. But it's also difficult to continue practicing. You might give up. So that's one example, but other examples of doubt, deluded doubt, would be to think, like with regard to Buddha's teachings, if you have doubt about, oh, if there's really such a thing as enlightenment, that I can attain liberation from suffering, is there really rebirth, reincarnation? Is karma really true? And so on. So having doubt that isn't helpful, isn't constructive, but is kind of counterproductive to your practice. And yeah, obviously it's a distraction to your concentration. So it's normal to have doubt. It's okay to have doubt, but we should investigate our doubt. We should try to clear up doubts on our own or going to a teacher or other students, talk about our doubts, try to get it clear. Don't just let the mind keep going around and around and around in circles, you know, with uncertainty, because then you get stuck. I think of a car that's stuck in the mud, and the driver is, pressing on the accelerator, but the wheels just keep going around, spinning in the mud and not going anywhere. So I think deluded doubt is like that. Your mind is spinning, but not going anywhere. So try to avoid getting stuck in that. So again, these things can happen during meditation, and they disturb our mind. They're a hindrance to having concentration, but they can also occur outside of meditation at other times. And so it is good to look out for them, notice when they're there. So the next slide contains some tools for working with those hindrances or any other hindrances. So the source of these is the second to the last point. It says these were taught by the Buddha in the discourse on the removal of distracting thoughts. It's MN stands for Majjhima Nikaya. This is one of the books of the Pali Canon. I think it's the middle length discourses of the Buddha. Okay, so first, number one is replace unwholesome thoughts with wholesome ones. So these are things the Buddha himself practiced. Okay, so he wasn't always a Buddha. He wasn't always enlightened. He was an ordinary person like us, and he had problems and he had delusions, and he had to work with his mind to be able to meditate properly and get enlightened. And so these are things that he found were useful in working with the mind. So first is, yeah, replacing unwholesome thoughts with wholesome ones. So, if we notice any of those hindrances, um, desire or malicious thinking or any other kind of affliction, doubt, regret, and restlessness, and so on. So recognize that that's a hindrance. What's happening in my mind right now is a hindrance. It's something unwholesome. It's something unhelpful. I should not let my mind get stuck in that. I should do something else, something more positive, more constructive. And we can do that. We can, throw out those unwholesome thoughts and replace them with wholesome ones. So, just for example, for feeling anger or irritation, any of that kind of feeling towards somebody, then recognize, oh, this isn't helpful. I don't want to keep thinking like this. So, what can I do that's more positive? So if you're familiar with loving kindness, that feeling, if you've that usually takes time to develop, but if you have worked on developing thoughts of loving kindness, then you can bring that up in your mind and extend loving kindness to that person, which can be as simple as just saying to yourself, may they be happy. I wish them to be happy. How wonderful it would be if they could be happy. Something like that. But that may be hard to do. So you can try to find something else. One thing I find helpful is to remind myself of something I like about the person. I've actually been working recently with someone that I I don't know why. I just get irritated by this person. And I see them almost every day. And so I'm trying to work with that. And I find, yeah, it's really helpful just to think of positive things about this person. This person has actually some really good qualities, and they do some really good things, really good work, really good activities. They're really nice to me. So if I just remind myself of those positive things about the person, then the irritation just goes away. Like it just doesn't make any sense to dislike this person, to be irritated by them. So those are some examples of how we can, you know, replace something unwholesome with something wholesome. And then if the problem is attachment or desire towards some person or some object, then it's helpful to think about impermanence, how that person or that object isn't permanent, isn't always like that, it won't always be like that forever. They're subject to change, to getting older, aging, and even death. At some point, they'll go out of existence. So just contemplating the impermanent nature of that object, that can sort of bring us down from the excitement of desire and attachment. So those are some examples. There's lots of others, but yeah, just to give a general idea. Number two is reflect on the faults of unwholesome thoughts. So this is good because you may not yet be convinced that it is unhelpful to get angry or have irritation or have desire. You might think, well, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with having desire, attachment? What's wrong with being irritated? So then it's helpful to contemplate, what is wrong with those things. Um, so in the teachings, there's a lot of explanation about that, like how they disturb our mind. That's one of the characteristics of a delusion or an affliction, that it disturbs our mind. It makes our mind disturbed, agitated, unpeaceful. So see if that's true or not. Yeah. Is your mind calm, peaceful, happy when you have those kind of thoughts? Or is it disturbed and unhappy, unpeaceful? And then, Buddhism explains long-term effects of unwholesome thoughts, how, yeah, they can motivate us to act in ways that are unwholesome, that are negative, create negative karma, which will then lead to suffering and problems further down the line. So that's thinking about the karma of acting with unwholesome thoughts. And then, yeah, if we are interested in following the spiritual path and attaining the goals of the spiritual path, like enlightenment, nirvana, single-pointed concentration, and so on, then these unwholesome thoughts are hindrances. They're like blockages that prevent us from attaining those higher states. So those are just some examples of faults of unwholesome thoughts. But yeah, it's good to contemplate that so you really become convinced. That's the ideal. The ideal is to become convinced that this state of mind, whatever, anger, desire, this is not helpful for me. It's harmful, like something poisonous or like a scam. I was thinking about that recently because I think it was, about a year ago. I got an email one morning, and the email said something like, "Oh, you have just purchased a new iPhone for $699, and this will be deducted from your PayPal account. And if you did not make this purchase, please call this number. Have you received those emails? Well, it was for me, it was the first time, and I like, oh, I better call. I didn't buy that iPhone. So I kind of fell for the scam. And I was talking to this guy on the phone, and he was starting to ask me for details about my bank account. And then I started thinking, wait a minute, I think there's something wrong here. This isn't right. So I hung up, thankfully. Um, but yeah, for a while I was believing in it. And then, yeah, now I get those emails and I just trash them right away. So I've learned that those kind of emails are to be avoided, are to be ignored, are to be put in the trash. So it's kind of similar with our thoughts. You know, certain types of thoughts that can arise in our mind. They're like those, email scams. They're playing tricks on us. They're trying to lead us into something unhelpful and unwholesome. So we need to learn that so that we avoid them. Oh, this is something to be avoided, not to be believed in and followed. And then number 3 is ignore them. So just ignore. Yeah, just don't pay attention. Don't feed them, and they will go away. Yeah. So you have to be pretty convinced that those types of thoughts are not helpful. If you're convinced about that, then you can immediately, just like with those email scams, you can just say, no, I'm not even going to pay attention to this. I'm just going to put this in the trash right away. I know this is a scam. So, yeah, ignore them. But yeah, usually it takes a while to get to that point where you can do that. And then daily life, if you notice, some affliction coming up with regard to a person, feeling angry or irritated, or feeling strong desire or attachment, and it's not good for you, then you can just not look at that object or that person. Just don't pay attention to them. Now that sounds unfriendly if it's a person. It doesn't mean we should ignore people. We should ideally, the ideal thing is to have compassion and love and the wish to benefit them. But if our mind is, getting caught up with some affliction towards them, then at that point in time, it might be best to have some space, keep some distance from them, not in an unfriendly way, but just, recognize, time out, right? Right now, it's not helpful for me to be um, too close to this person. Go away, do something else, work on your mind. And then later, hopefully, you can meet them again and not have an afflicted mind towards them. Okay, 4th is analyze the causes and conditions that give rise to them. So here we do some analysis, try to understand. So why is this coming up? This particular disturbing thought, affliction, whatever it is. Kind of look underneath it, beneath it, behind it. What are the causes? What are the conditions that are giving rise to this? So this is something you could do just with your own experiences. You could, look at your experiences in life, conditioning with your family and so on, or your experiences with that particular person or that particular object. Why? Just try to understand why that affliction is coming up with regard to them. But also in the Buddhist teachings, the more you can understand the Buddhist teachings, then that gives you more information to understand what lies behind our afflictive, disturbing thoughts and emotions. And so then you can work with those and just understand where it's coming from. So the more you can understand the causes and conditions giving rise to disturbing thoughts and emotions, the more kind of power you have, the more ability you have to work with them and change them, and change your mind. And then number 5 is it says, crush the mind with mind. And sounds kind of violent, but I think those are the words the Buddha actually used. A contemporary teacher, Shyla Catherine, who wrote a book about these, down at the bottom, the last point at the bottom, there's a book called Beyond Distraction by Shyla Catherine. She's someone who's had a lot of experience with meditation and teaches meditation. And that book is all about the 5 hindrances and how to work with the 5 hindrances. So what she calls it in that book is exerting dedicated resolve. Sounds a little more polite than crush the mind with mind. So I think it just means being really firm with your mind. And what I think about is a mother with a bunch of kids, and the kids are being really rowdy. They're running around, making a lot of noise, just, yeah, out of control. And the mother's trying to get them to calm down and, behave themselves better. And so she'll first talk to them in a nice way, and they don't pay any attention. And then she talks a little more loud and firm, and they still don't pay attention. So finally, she might have to yell at them and just say, "That's enough." Yeah, in a very firm voice, and stand there and make sure they do pay attention and stop their misbehavior. So this should be done only as a last resort if the other 4 methods haven't worked. Okay, so that's the Buddha's experience. So just be really firm with your mind. Just say, no, I am not going to let my mind go down that road of anger or attachment or whatever. Just be really, really firm with your mind. But not with anger. This shouldn't be done with anger, hatred, frustration, with loving kindness, compassion, and also with the wish to be of benefit. Our whole reason, our whole purpose of meditating is because we want to be beneficial for ourselves and for others. And sometimes our mind is just really unruly, difficult to manage. And so we just have to be really firm with our mind. Okay, so this is just like a really brief explanation, but if you're interested in this topic, then down at the bottom, there's that book by Shyla Catherine, published by Wisdom. And there's also this ebook, which you can download for free. It's called Working with the 5 Hindrances. And the author is there, Ajahn Tira Dhammo. He's a Western monk. I don't know if he's American or anyway, but he's done a lot of meditation in Thailand. So he's had a lot of experience working with the 5 hindrances. So it's a really nice explanation of how to work with the mind, work with these hindrances. So we don't have time. I'll do this next time. Yeah, these 6 factors that causes afflictions to arise. So this is a really interesting teaching. This kind of explains what are some of the causes and conditions why afflictions like anger, attachment come up in our mind. Even we don't want them there, but they keep coming up. And so this is from the Lam Rim. And I'll talk about this next week, but it's helpful to know both for meditation, but also outside of meditation. Just gives you more material to work with your mind. And there's also a talk, Lama Yeshe gave a talk about these. It's in the book Wisdom Energy, which is, I think, the very first book that was ever published by Wisdom Publications. And it's still around, it's still available. It has a collection of different talks by Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche when they first started teaching in the West. So one of those talks is about these 6 factors. So you might, if you have access to that book, you might have a look at that. But I will go through these next week. We have a little bit of time left. If anyone would like to ask a question. Is there any problem you've experienced in meditation that I didn't talk about and you would like to ask about?
Venerable, I have a question.
Cynthia?
If there's no one else. Again, thank you for your teachings, Venerable. I really appreciate it. I just had a thought about, because I attended introduction to Buddhist Tibetan debate, I think it is, in another center. And I was just wondering what your thoughts are. Like, I feel like the structure where you kind of look at the pros and cons of a point might work for an analytical meditation, because sometimes I do analytical meditation and I also end up ruminating. Like my mind goes off and then it's hard to let it come back. But I'm looking for like a more structured so that I'm not jumping out of doing too much, going in circles. And I was wondering what your thought was, because I thought the debate structure kind of, you have these 2 points and then you look at the pros and cons of a certain point and then you try and like conclude. And I was wondering if that your thought is on that, or whether that's too much to introduce into analytical meditation. Thank you.
Well, I haven't really studied debate, and just a little, I've taken a few classes, I've tried it out a little bit, but it's not something that I have, done extensively. I mean, they do say that it's good to know that the structure of debate and that practice of debate for Lammer meditation, because when it comes to working with our mind sometimes has mistaken ideas about things, wrong ideas about things. Like, I am inherently existing. I exist inherently. And so the debate structure is to cut through mistaken ideas, mistaken concepts. And so you need to know how to debate with your own mind to prove that you're wrong about certain things. Yeah. But like I say, this isn't something I have experienced. But like the monks and nuns in the monasteries, they study the great texts, they also debate. And so they spend a lot of time, get really familiar with that whole kind of practice of debating. And then I think they do it with partners, but then when they're doing their meditation, they would do it on their own. But they usually spend years, at least 15, 16, 17, 18 years doing that in a situation where they have teachers guiding them and lots of other people with more experience helping them and so on. So I think if you didn't have that kind of structure, that kind of situation, it could be hard to do that on your own. That's my experience. I haven't learned how to do that. And so, um, I don't know what to say. I mean, it is good to have teachings, to go to classes on the Lam Rim, listen to oral teachings like from a teacher explaining the Lam Rim topics, and then on your own contemplate the points that you've learned. And I mean, it's not easy. Meditation is not easy. Analytical meditation is not easy. Um, so Um, but yeah, the more you can study, listen to teachings, read books, and so on, then hopefully that will give you better understanding. And I think it also does require skill at concentration, so that if your mind is going off in a tangent, some other direction, you recognize that and you pull it back and think, no, I shouldn't be thinking about that. I should be thinking about this. And so yeah, it takes quite a bit of practice and skills. And I always find it's when I'm in retreat, a retreat situation, that is when I can make the most progress or feel like I'm really doing it well. But in daily life, it's often hard because you got so many other things to think about that can interrupt. So if you have the chance to participate in a lumber retreat, either on your own or in a group, that might be really helpful. Okay, so we've run out of the time for this class. And again, if there are questions you have that come up, you can write them in to the center and I'll send them to me and I'll answer them in the future. So next class, yeah, we'll look at those 6 factors and I thought we could also look more closely at placement or stabilizing meditation and how to develop that, how to cultivate that. So let's conclude with the dedication, mentally dedicating the merit, the positive energy we've created here tonight, doing this session, listening to teachings, doing meditation with a good motivation. We started off with the wish to be of benefit to not only ourselves, but others as well. So that's a really good motivation, and everything we do with that motivation becomes very beneficial. So let's dedicate this merit, this positive energy, that it will be beneficial to all other beings, bring them happiness, peace, and help them be free of all suffering and its causes. Okay, thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Michael, for hosting. See you next week. Bye-bye.